Shabbat Shalom, Hag Sameach. So I hope that everyone who might be joining us on the live stream or those who are in the room right now had a nice beginning to their Passover. And, now since the pandemic has been going on, I realize that that could either be indoors with your friends and family in your actual home, or perhaps you sort of span the entire U.S. still using Zoom. And I have always loved Passover. It was really a big deal in my family. And I think this was mostly because, just like in all homes, it was sort of all hands on deck to get the house ready and all the Seder accoutrement ready for the Seder night. When I was younger, I really did enjoy the cleaning part. Now, not so much, but then I really did enjoy it, and it meant then that I got a little bit of extra spending cash when I would help out. And my job was to take care of cleaning the cars, which was something that I actually still love doing to this day, cleaning my cars. Perhaps you saw April's post of me and Aria cleaning our cars last week, although I was told this wasn't much of a big pollen count this year, so I should be in store for things next year. But as I got older, I really started to appreciate the Seder itself. And this is not because my family did not do their best to try and keep me interested, but you have to understand, sort of as having a rabbi as a father, and at that time a sister who was in rabbinical school and became a Jewish educator, our Seder conversations could go really, 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 really long. I actually think, as I mentioned in my Voice of Chaim article, that I think our record was somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m. when we finally wrapped the whole thing up. And I really would say that I hit full appreciation for more of the adult parts of Passover when I myself was in rabbinical school. And I was able to share a table with all of my classmates. And yes, we were sort of able to replicate what my father had done when I was younger, going deeper and deeper into the conversation, bringing out the random different things that we had learned. But one of the best parts of this Seder that I'm thinking of from my first year was that my friend had a tradition where he said, "Bring whatever Haggadah you want." Now, as somebody who now has led many Seders, that is kind of petrifying to do because you have no idea what is in the other person's Haggadah, and you can't do a simple thing like call out, "Now we're on page 10. But there was something really amazing about it. And in thinking about one particular aspect that I enjoyed, it was sort of this modernization of looking at our 4 children. And the 4 children in one of the Haggadahs, the one that I still use to this day, is trying to focus on sort of what might it look like if we had depictions of our children, the 4 children, different renderings from different artists. And as my mother and my grandmother of blessed memory, she was an artist herself, I've always been intrigued by this sort of artistic midrash. And so as I flipped through the different pieces of that Haggadah, which, in case you would like something for your Seders tonight, I made copies from there with all the different renditions of the 4 children. But as I flipped through them, I started to sort of pick out which son or child I was that year, that moment at the Seder. As I started to do this, I started to realize that I'm not always the wise child, and I can say I'm not always the simple child. And yes, at times I can see myself as the Rasha, the evil, wicked, or last night at our Seder we determined nefarious was a fantastic translation as well. But as I'm thinking now back to sort of the past 2 years and the pandemic, I think I really must say I'm most identified with the child who does not even know how to ask a question. And I say that because the past years have been filled with not a lot of answers. We haven't had so many questions that at times it almost got too overwhelming to ask anymore. And I honestly think that is where I found myself. I found myself wanting to ask the right questions about our faith, about tradition, science, justice, and so much more during the pandemic-riddled months. But sometimes I could not even get them out. Now, if you were like me, that is entirely okay, not knowing what question to ask. And maybe perhaps at your Seder last night or in your Seder tonight, you might identify with a different one of the children. And our very Torah texts that are really the basis for these 4 children seem to be in an order or a spectrum of the children themselves. So our first case, we start with the Rasha, or the wicked child. This is based on Exodus 12, 26 through 27, and when we see it in our Haggadah, it reads, "What does the evil one say? What is this worship to you? To you and not to him. And since he excluded himself from the collective, he denied a principle of Jewish faith." Then we move to our simple child. And there it says, and regarding the simple child, it says, you will open the conversation and state, and you will speak to your son on that day, for the sake of this did the Lord do this for me, going out of Egypt. And then we continue again for our innocent child. What does the innocent one say? What is this? And you will say to him, with the strength of a hand did the Lord take us out from the land of Egypt. And then we get to the Chacham, to the wise child. What does the wise child say? What are these testimonies, statutes, and judgments that the Lord our God commanded you? And accordingly you will say to him, as per the laws of the Pesach sacrifice, we may not eat an afikomen until after the Pesach sacrifice. So, why does the Torah present them this way? Why do we have them sort of in this special order? And it's really sort of interesting that if you think about how I just recited the 4 children to you, you might have noticed there is a little bit of a different order than how it appears in our Haggadah itself. And I will say that the Torah does this to really sort of show a full spectrum, right? We sort of start with having this full spectrum. We don't just list the very first 2, the wise and the wicked, like we do in our Seder, but we start and we sort of have wicked all the way to wise, and then sort of everything in between. And this is to allow us to know that we too belong along this spectrum. We too are not always just one manifestation of the children shared in our Passover Seder. And it is okay to be all 4 at them at some time, and also some combination. And Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs provides something really interesting concerning the 4 children. He says, it may be that the 4 sons are not different people, but successive stages in the development of a child. We begin by being unable to ask. We accept the world as given. The next stage is intellectual growth, is curiosity. This could be sort of the simple nature of a child. And we ask questions with no ulterior motive. We simply want to learn. This is often followed by a period of testing and challenging the values we have received, perhaps an aspect of our wicked child, or a child who is in their adolescence. And even if you think about it, the Hebrew word for adolescent, na'ar, also means to shake off. And the teenage years are ones where we develop our own identity by putting received values to the test. And this can sometimes lead to rebellion as a form of self-exploration. The culmination of cognitive growth is wisdom, the point at which we have internalized the values of heritage and are sufficiently mature to see their objective merits. Although the Haggadah uses the word wise, Rabbi Lord Sachs points out, rabbinic tradition preferred the phrase Talmid Hacham, a wise disciple. Wisdom in Judaism is not a state, but a process of constant learning. Every answer is itself the prelude to a deeper question, and thus there is constant growth as we move to new levels of understanding. And in really thinking about that and reading and internalizing Rabbi Sachs's words, it makes me also more comfortable to identify with one and each of the children. It allows my true, authentic self in each moment to really be present. Because if we think about a wise child as someone who is always learning, then to get to that point, we really need to go along that entire spectrum, even as we get older, to really keep digging, to keep finding those things that are troubling or challenging us. And so there was also a fantastic sort of thing that I like to point out to my father, that, well, how wicked really is, or rebellious really is this child? Because it seems to me that a truly rebellious child would not even be present at the Seder itself to ask a question. So in searching for sort of an answer to my own question, I came across a teaching by the Rebbe. And the Rebbe actually speaks of a fifth child. The Rebbe says, unfortunately, there is in our time of confusion and obscurity another kind of Jewish child. The child who is conspicuous by his absence from the Seder itself. The one who has no interest whatsoever in Torah and God's commandments. Who is not even aware of the Seder, not aware of the Exodus from Egypt, and the subsequent revelation at Sinai. And this presents a grave challenge which should command our attention long before the Passover Seder night. For no Jewish child should be forgotten and given up. We must make every effort to save also that lost child and bring the absentee to the Seder table, determined to do so and driven by a deep sense of compassion and responsibility. We need have no fear of failure. And in thinking about that fifth child, I hope that all of us, whether the simple child or the wise child at a given moment, we never slide into that role of being the fifth child. And we really try and make sure that no one in our community or in our family or people as a whole feel as if they are that fifth child. We need to ensure that we are being responsible to make sure that everyone feels as if they have a place. There is a place for them along that spectrum, and there is no reason they should be viewed as being outside of it. And so, may we all have a meaningful Seder this evening, and may we all appreciate the Seder, which is meant for us to question, to struggle, but ultimately to grow, so that we all can be a Talmid Hacham. Hag Sameach.